Welcome to the kbbreview podcast. I'm Andy Davies and welcome to a brand new season. This is officially episode 1 of season 16, and to mark the occasion we're having a little bit of a change. I'm extremely chuffed and I'll be honest, a little bit excited to reveal that we will now have a fixed regular panel of retailers who we will hear from every week. We'll be discussing a different topic every episode as always, but it means we can get to know them and their businesses better, as well as tap into their first-hand experience of life on the front line of independent KBB retail. Now this is something I've wanted to do for ages, and they're all names you'll know if you're a regular listener. We've got Justine Bullock, Pantling-Jones, Trevor Scott and Nick Warrington. And don't worry, I'll still be doing bonus interview episodes with interesting industry people alongside these regular discussion ones. So to kick us off, over the next 3 episodes we're going to look at how business has changed in the last 5 years, in other words since COVID. So much is different, with so many different factors influencing the landscape, and we're going to split it into 3 different areas: the consumer, the supplier and the installer. This week it's all about the consumer. How have they changed? What do they look for in their retailer? How much do they actually know about kitchens and bathrooms? How do you communicate with them? And how much do they think it all costs, and if the value is worth it in today's economy? We'll be covering all that and more in a minute, but first, how do you fancy winning a big shiny award for being a brilliant retailer, designer, supplier or installer? Entries are now open for the kbbreview Retail and Design Awards 2026. It's the biggest awards in the industry, and unbelievably, this is the 32nd year of them. They're the trophy everyone wants to win, and it could be you. It's totally free to enter, and not only that, if you're shortlisted, you get free tickets to the event too. So what have you got to lose? Everything you need to know is at kbbreview.com/awards. That's kbbreview.com/awards, and the closing date is Thursday, November the 13th. Good luck. All right, so here we are. Let's say hello to our panel in, I think, alphabetical order. I think I've worked this out. We've got Justine Bullock from the Tap End, near Cardiff. Hello, Justine.
Hello.
We've got Pantling-Jones from Lima Kitchens in Milton Keynes. Hello, Liz.
Hello, Andy.
I'm tempted to call you Liz PJ, because I think that's quite, that sounds quite cool. Liz PJ.
That's fine.
Yeah, we'll go with that. We've got Trevor Scott from RFK. Hello, Trevor.
Hi.
And we've got Nick Warrington from Stuart J. Warrington in Macclesfield. Hello, Nick. I will call you Stuart at some point by mistake.
Everybody does
Morning, that, I'm sure. Right. So, look, thank you for coming in. How are we all today? We're in September now. How's September treating you? There's always a little bit of an upkeep when the summer finishes. Liz, what do you think? How's September so far?
It's busy, really busy. So the last couple of weeks of August was unusual, and we're just following up on all the leads that we managed to get over the summer, which is surprising.
Oh, good. Well, that's positive. How about you, Joe? How's September so far?
Well, there's definitely been an uptick in the last few weeks, so I can qualify that against what Liz has just said. It's not been a busy year by any standards. I would say our new norm has been operating between 15 and 20% below what we would like to consider to be a norm. But at least the inquiries are coming through now, but at a better level. So, good for the autumn, hopefully.
Okay, well, some positivity too. Justine, how about you?
Already better than August. We had quite an unusually quiet August. So September, we've been looking forward to a new month, yeah.
It does feel a little bit, Nick, like the seasonality is coming back.
Definitely, yeah. But back to sort of the pre-COVID days of quieter summertime where people actually go out and go on holiday again and don't think about kitchens. And then back end of August, it all starts warming up again when they start thinking about, I do actually want that new kitchen before Christmas, and the panic sets in.
All right, so today we're going to talk about the consumer. And it's funny that Nick talks about COVID, because I really want to look at really how the consumer has changed in the last 5 years. In other words, since COVID started. It just feels like so much has changed in quite a short period of time. How people work, how people live, how people approach big purchases, what their motivations for it all are, that I thought it was just worth using that as a little bit of context to talk about, how business is right now. So let's start, I think, with how they arrive with you, the journey of how they arrive with you. How have their research changed? How do they choose which retailers to use and which products to buy? Justine, let's start with you, because you're a sole bathroom person here. What's changed in how they arrive at your door?
I think that during COVID, we had like an extremely captive audience. Everyone was at your fingertips if you were social media ready. And that really worked for us. So having customers find us on social media and just be available for chats and available for consultations was great for us. Then that continued, I think, for a couple of years. And now we are finding that we need a different route to attracting clients. I do think it's changed for sure. Yeah.
Right, okay. So what do you think, Nick? Has it changed? Obviously, there were trends set during COVID in terms of social and that kind of thing, but has it shifted again?
I mean, COVID was a big step change, because I think that was the point where there was a mass adoption, if you like, of internet research before people even started stepping into showrooms. And that's carried over, obviously, post-COVID, where there's a lot more research done now, I think, by the consumer before they even go near a showroom. And I think that continues to be the case today, that I think the average consumer is doing the homework and is better informed about what they're after before they even step in the door. So that kind of initial phase of, if you like, educating the client and bringing them up to speed in terms of what is and isn't available to them, that gap isn't as huge perhaps as it used to be, where perhaps, they might not have bought a kitchen ever or the last 20 years and they didn't know what had changed in the meantime. Internet and social media is changing all that. People are coming in, aren't they, on one of these that I've seen on Instagram. And so that's been the big shift for me, is that people are sort of wheeling out who they're after at a very early stage. So when they come in, for us, because we're not on the high street, it's generally quite a warm lead in terms of them as a prospect and following that through.
I mean, Trevor, I apologise, I'm going to keep coming back to you as the sort of veteran in all of this. But there's a time, wasn't there, when people just wander in, they wouldn't know anything. You would be able to start from scratch with them up to a point. Whereas now, as Nick points out, they're coming in forearmed. But are they coming in with too much information or too much expectation?
Well, there's an old saying, isn't there, that little knowledge is dangerous. And the consumer nowadays manages to arm themselves with a lot of misinformation and very little actual knowledge. But they're doing all their research online in advance of visiting the showrooms. Indeed, one of the major shifts we've noticed this year is that Saturdays for us now has become a dead day as far as new inquiries are concerned. Yet we're coming back on a Monday morning to an inbox full of brochure downloads and appointment requests, which is great. But it does mean that Saturdays are effectively devoted to presentations of quotes rather than waiting for the next new consumer to come in and become a hot lead. So the online presence that we have as a business has become all the more important because so much research is done in advance. And if you don't make the cut of being one of the three, for the sake of argument, that the consumer chooses to go and visit or call up and arrange to have an appointment with, then you've already missed the boat. You're not going to get a look in. So working with our social media and with our online presence, with the relevance of our website, etc., has become all the more important as a consequence.
We talked about this before, haven't we, Liz, that you've got to sort of start by telling people what they can't have or what they can't possibly afford, given the research they've done and the images that they come in with. And actually, there's far too much information for them. And therefore, your role maybe becomes much more about curation as much as it is about design.
Yeah, it is. I think it's interesting that you say about, do they have too much information? So what we have found is more people are coming in with things that are harder to achieve in the UK market. So we either don't have the product or the skill set to achieve what they're after, but also the variations of price guides that you get on there, doing it DIY, and they're managing their expectations. But we also find that when they initially come in, and even kind of up to when we're installing it, that information is still available to them and being fed to them constantly. And so that's a challenge which I think is increasing in requirements of needing to manage as well.
And do they talk about the reviews that you've had? Independent retail by its nature is all about recommendations and reputation, right? That's the big differential amongst them. But the way that's extended, I think, particularly since COVID, when you couldn't go and see people, is the idea of the online review and the online Trustpilot view of the world. Do they sort of wave that at you?
Yeah, a lot of people come in and say, we've been looking around and the reviews that you have are impressive, and that's why we've come to you and put you onto our shortlist. So the reviews definitely have a big impact for us, for sure. But I think that people are becoming more aware of having a look around, so not just relying on one platform for reviews as well, just trying to fact check in other manners as well and multiple sources.
Yeah, it's hard, isn't it? I mean, because Justine, you do an awful lot of social stuff. You produce about 5 bathrooms a minute, it seems, if you look at your social.
I know.
Do they come and wave your photos at you and go, "You did this for somebody else"?
So we have a really robust consultation process, and it's long for a reason, so that we truly engage with clients that understand what we do, we understand what they are trying to achieve, and we're not excluding anybody, but we would rather attract clients that understand what we do, so we don't have to go through the process of trying to explain what we do. So when we get a first contact, we go through a consultation process with people. It's digital. They can do it at home in their own time. And then they really get to understand the depth of information that we need from them. And part of that process, we ask them for images of their inspiration. So where they're getting their inspiration from for what they're trying to achieve. And almost every single time will be one of our bathrooms in amongst those pictures. So that's amazing for us, because we think there was a time where you couldn't very easily just go and take photos of a project that looked professional unless you had some sort of photography skills or some sort of equipment. But now with the iPhones, and you can take a photograph that looks like it's been done by a professional photographer. And that really helps us to attract new customers, and attracting them with our own work, I think, is the best way, because they're not then having to go through, what Liz said, they're getting images that are unachievable, and then we have to try and talk them out of it. So they're actually using our work, and then we know it's achievable.
Yeah. Well, let's talk money, Nick. Let's talk money. Have you noticed a shift in what people expect the spend to be, or what their budgets are? Is the amount of knowledge, or just how much a nice kitchen costs, is that part of the information that people are gathering before they come to you? How has the budget management changed?
I think it's difficult. I think that obviously with all the news over the last couple of years in terms of inflation and whatnot, that's fed through to the consumer now a bit more in terms of their expectations of where budgets are, and that ultimately costs have risen and that they've had to be passed on to them. And so I think I found this year that the clients that we've been getting through the door, generally their budget expectations are more realistic than perhaps they were 12 or 18 months ago, where perhaps prices had raced ahead of where consumer expectations were, and there seemed to be a bigger disparity then than there is now. So the prices that I'm delivering to people in quotes, I'm not sort of getting too many people falling off the chair backwards with shock and awe. We get the odd one, of course, but generally their expectations are a little bit more realistic. And I think that, everything's gone up. Materials have gone up. I don't know about everybody else, but the cost of fitters and plumbers and electricians and plasterers, it's all gone up. And people are starting to understand that in terms of the overall budget. But, again, part of the consultation process, as Justine said, we do the same, where we're pretty comprehensive in explaining where your costs are going. Within this quote, there's this for this for that. And it's only sort of rough and ready figures. I don't, I'm not a split your quote down into nuts and bolts kind of guy, but I help them to understand where the costs are. And realistically, if we produce a quote that is a bit beyond their expectations and where they want to be, then we help manage them in terms of costs and where they want to be.
So, Liz, are there less falling off the back of a chair moments for you as well? A lot of this is about research, isn't it? There isn't a lot of information about the specifics of pricing because of the nature of every kitchen is completely different. But are they more realistic about what this project might cost them now than they would have been 5 years ago?
Occasionally we find people who are at the lower end and end up looking to self-manage and source things from other suppliers and kind of a bit more piecemeal for them. But yeah, people tend to be more aware of what the costs are, but also willing to listen to the explanation of what the costs entail, like Nick was saying. So, okay, but this isn't just a £20,000 kitchen. The kitchen is 20,000 and you've got appliances and the worktop and the electrician, and just helping them see why those price guides that they may have seen elsewhere aren't lining up with the proposal that you're offering. And people, as I say, tend to be more open to listening and reasonable in working out what the budget needs to be for them.
And how about financing it, Trevor? Has there been a change in that, or is it still basically as it always has been?
For us, it hasn't really changed. As a business, we never have, and we have no intention of offering finance. And we get so few people requesting whether or not we do offer finance that it's just of no concern to us whatsoever. We do find that our clients have, under nearly all circumstances, worked out where the money's coming from in advance of making the purchase with us. It's the scale of the purchase that has changed. There's a lot of champagne tastes out there, but we've only got a Tetley tea bag budget. You know, and it's that process of education, going through the whole process of what various elements of the project are likely to cost, and tempering that against what the realistic budget is. So, I mean, a good example of that would be we've recently done a job that came out at 26 grand with oak painted shaker doors on it. But it had quartz worktops, it had all metal appliances, and the client wasn't prepared to drop the quartz work surfaces or the metal appliances. So we switched the doors to a vinyl wrap shaker door, shaved £4,000 off the price of the job and on the order. You know, and we're seeing that more and more often, that clients have got very, very fixed ideas as to what products they want in terms of appliances and work surfaces. Then they become immovable objects, and the only place that you've got left to play with the final price is with the furniture. And obviously, you don't want to drop our margin, so we've got to drop the quality of the product that's being used. So we're doing a lot of PVC edged sort of laminate doors from our carcass manufacturers, price group 1 doors from the Germans and such like, rather than the higher end lacquers or the painted shakers on solid wood. And, you know, we can live with that. That doesn't bother us. But we've just got to read the customer right and make sure that we don't under or oversell them.
I think in the past, we've tried to accommodate people in a way that we're trying to give them everything they want. But recently, we've changed our approach where in our consultation process, we now say, what's your budget? And then when we create this design, what's your top priority? Do you want us to stick to your budget, or do you want us to give a design that includes everything you're asking for, but it may exceed your budget? And those two questions being added to our process have just helped so much, because we really understand what the client is asking for. They have their dream, but they really need to stick to budget, or they have their dream and they're willing to pay for the dream. And it stops so many difficult conversations like, well, why can't I have that? Why can't I have that? Those additions to those questions have really changed things for us. And it means that now we're not having those conversations where we are compromising so much, because straight off the bat, we know where we need to be for the client, either sticking to their budget or pushing to achieve their expectations. But most of the time, we get two different types of clients. We get a batch of clients that are after the aesthetics and they don't really care too much about quality, probably first-time bathroom purchasers, so they don't know really what quality means. And then we get people that are seasoned renovators or people who've done other elements of their home and they care about quality instead of aesthetics. If you look at our social media, I think that's obvious. We get clients that invest in quality and we get clients that really want the aesthetics first.
What about you, Liz? How has that design priority changed, as Justine puts it?
So, yeah, I need more work surface. 9 times out of 10, it's not more work surface, it's just in the right place. But again, I think we've had a process of a thorough consultation for a long time, and pre-COVID, where we're talking about the priorities and budgets. I know a lot of people are still scared or find it pointless discussing someone's budget, but it's something we've always found really important to kind of identify what their lifestyle is, invest in the client, understand the changes that they might make and how they've arrived at a budget, so that you know what information they've been exposed to already, what quotes they may have already had, and try to help them through the journey. So we try to have kind of a handheld process in bite-sized pieces for people and just show them the elements that match with their life, rather than asking them specifically what it is they're after. So it's more client-centric than product-centric from that approach.
I don't know whether you heard the Lawrence Llewellyn Bowen episode, but he was talking about how people's priorities have changed. But of course, he was talking about it through television. In other words, he was saying it started off with changing rooms when people really discovered that you could paint one wall a different colour than the other three, and people's kind of eyes were open to what interior design actually was. And he goes, the changing rooms was killed off because everyone then got obsessed with how much their house was worth. So it all went to Kirsty and Phil. Everything was about adding stuff to your house about how much it's worth. Whereas now it's all about George Clark. It's all about amazing homes and beautiful homes and different homes, grand designs. It's all about people setting up homes for life or things that really reflect their personality. And I think that is one of the things that's come out of COVID is that people want a house to be their home, not just something that's worth another 10 grand more than it was 6 weeks ago. When people come into unit, do they talk about this stuff? Do they talk about, we're going to be here for years, we want it to reflect us, I don't care if anyone else likes it?
That's a really interesting point, actually, and I've not thought about that in advance. But it is a really interesting point, because I think if you sort of throw your mind back, say, 7 or 8 years, I feel like I went through a phase where it was not another light grey kitchen, because, everybody... before that it was, the alabaster, then we went to light grey, and everybody had one mind on, I can't do too anything, it was the Kirsty and Phil, neutralise everything, and then I won't upset any prospective buyer, that'll maximise the value of my home. What I've seen change perhaps over the last 3-4 years in our business is that's disappeared. We still get some of those, granted, but the variety, for instance, in terms of the colours that people want in their kitchen is massive compared to what it was, doing pinks and blues and greens, all sorts of different colours. And I think people are, in terms of the interiors, that are going back to feeling like they want to express themselves a little bit more with the interiors that they do and make them more individual to their own tastes, rather than thinking about what some future buyer may or may not like when they come around and look at their house. Well, we still have those conversations, so if someone comes in and they're doing that kitchen specifically with the intention of that we've got to be moving in 18 months time and we want it to look great at that point, that might be a different conversation to one, we did one last year and the utilities pink, the kitchen's green, but they're planning to be there for the next 15 years. So, they wanted something that reflected their taste and their personality, and not some generic dumb everything down to please everybody. So we're getting much more of that. And for me as a designer, that's a far more interesting place to be.
A couple of years ago, I heard someone say, stop renting from the future owners, which is a phrase that I've held on to, because too many people go, I really don't want to do this, but I'm thinking I'm going to be moving when the kids, have gone to university, which is going to be in 6 years' time. So I don't want it to match. It's like, well, those future owners might not like grey anyway. They may not like oak. So long as it's functional, it's about getting across it being a functional space rather than the colours. And I think there is a little bit more of a shift.
And it's a reflection, isn't it? It's about saying this is who I am. And Justine, this is 100% cloakroom under the stairs bathroom territory, isn't it? Because everyone has been given permission to just go completely mad when it comes to doing cloakrooms under the stairs.
Yeah, people will embrace it if you say, go a bit crazy in your cloakroom. They love that. But if you say to do something unusual in the bathroom or the ensuite, they're very resistant, unless they come to you with that kind of personality originally. If that reflects their personality, if that reflects the way they live, great. But if they're just normal, everyday client with a nice home, but they don't push the boundaries, they're so easily led when it comes to cloakrooms. But really, it's really hard when it comes to bathrooms and ensuites. But I would say we don't push it. We will try and suggest things, but we definitely, if we meet resistance, we don't push it too far, because imagine if we pushed someone to commit to something that cost thousands of pounds and they hated it. We do, have a lot of neutral bathrooms on our portfolio for that reason, that clients, they just resist colour and resist pattern in rooms they use every day, but in cloakrooms, they go crazy. Yeah.
It's like getting a tattoo when you're drunk. It's pretty permanent, but you've made that decision at the wrong time.
I'm the opposite. I do push. I ask why.
Right.
Yeah. Because how often people say, I'd love to do that. But I do have a designer who is very much more neutral. And I'll say to people now, you're going to get a much more pleasing result for yourself working with this designer over me, because that's just not what I enjoy and is my aesthetic. And I think that's important as well.
let's round this off really with a talk about service, because I'm wondering, Trevor, again, you've been doing this a long time. Over time, communication methods have changed. Have customers' expectations of how they can talk to you, when they can talk to you, what levels of service and expectations they have? How's that changed?
Well, the expectations of a very high level of service are absolute nowadays. You have nowhere to hide whatsoever, even to the extent that we've had the odd client who has literally threatened us unless we give them money back. And that's regardless whether we've done anything wrong and are rectifying it. It's just people being very unfair in some cases. But you're constantly living with that sword of Damocles hanging over you that is a poor Google review. So not only do you automatically bend over backwards to ensure that you've got the very best level of service you possibly can do, but your client knows that and are expecting it and demanding it. So it puts a huge amount of pressure on you as a business. But their expectations are sometimes beyond realistic. So managing clients' expectations is a well-worn phrase in our showrooms, and we spend a lot of time doing just that.
So, Nick, how late would you refuse to answer a WhatsApp from a customer?
Well, that's a good question. What I try to do now, I'll be honest with you, is I used to give out my own mobile phone number, and I've stopped that. And we now have a number, there's a landline number for the kitchen side of the business, which is tied to business WhatsApp. So that comes through to a couple of different phones, so it can be picked up by someone else if I'm not available. If that comes through out of hours and it's at 9 o'clock at night and it's not important, it gets answered at 8 o'clock the following morning. And I do that just out of habit, because it got to the point where I was getting that many WhatsApps at night that you just sat there all night answering WhatsApps. Whereas now what I do, I turn off the notifications on it. If I look at my phone to check them, and I'll see if there's anything that's come in, but I'm not waiting for notifications to come in. And what I find is if you reply at 8 o'clock the following morning, they reply during the day. And if every time they WhatsApp at night, they don't get an answer till the following day, you very quickly train your client to contact you during the office hours. I found that we've had a tail off now in out of hours WhatsApps, because they don't get a reply out of hours, they get a reply during the day, unless it's particularly urgent, where if they're unsure about what's happening the next day because communication hasn't been as clear as it should have been, then yes, I'll answer that and they'll get an answer straight away. But if it's, I'm still undecided about this handle or that handle, well, you're waiting until tomorrow morning for that one. So
where do you stand, Liz? What's your WhatsApp cutoff?
So we have various different WhatsApps, and we have dedicated people set to respond. So we encourage our staff not to take the phones home with them, particularly unless there's going to be an early delivery and they might need a call in the morning. So those service responses don't happen until the following day anyway. They would have to email us. And it's a case of, if I'm working, I might choose to respond, but as standard, you've got an automated message. These are our hours. We'll respond in our next working hours. And if they get a response beforehand, lucky them.
It's hard, isn't it, Justine? Because part of, again, that independent thing is you build up a relationship with the client. You become friendly with them, if not friends. And therefore, is there an expectation? Hi, Justine, can you just tell me about that tap at 10 o'clock at night while you're trying to watch, Love Island or whatever? But it's an expression of that relationship, isn't it?
Well, I've never had a WhatsApp from a client, ever.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So we just don't open the door. And if you don't open the door and they just can't. But it wasn't an intentional thing. I just think that when we started the company and we had a team, we had staff, I never wanted them to feel pressure that made their job difficult. And adding pressure, like giving clients personal mobile numbers, as I'd come from managing someone else's company, I knew that it wasn't a good idea for people to be able to do their job and have time at home and enjoy the work-life balance. So I just always tell the girls, never give your mobile number out. If someone asks, say no. If someone asks because they need to send something, like perhaps it's too big a file to send by email or, something like that, they can send it to me. But then I just never respond. I'll just take the information and pass it to the designer. So we never really opened those lines of communication with WhatsApp and client, obviously they can email you at any time. And when we first opened the company, I would answer emails like a frantic person, you know, at any time, because I'd think I had to. And then I found that I was stressed out. So I'd be going to bed and I'd be like just wound up because maybe I'd been emailing at 9 o'clock at night or 10 o'clock at night. But it wasn't always the client interaction that stressed me out. By going on my emails, I'd see other emails. So it wasn't even responding to the client. It was just seeing other things that would stress me out. So I just learned to not open an email. Just, if it's going to stress me out, don't look at it, don't open it the next day. But I think that if I personally were to have a direct line with clients by WhatsApp, it would stress me out so much because I really like to have my things in one place. So I like to have email chains. I like to have my notepad in work. I think having WhatsApps, emails, notepads, conversations, I'd forget things. So I'm quite like rigid with that.
Well, look, I tell you what, I think time's beaten us for this episode, but that is a subject we're definitely coming back to, which is communicating with clients, because everyone's got a completely different view of that, haven't they? Thank you so much for this today. That's it for this week, but time has beaten us. But in next week's episode, we'll flip it round and discuss how suppliers have changed in the last 5 years. I mean, you can all have your say without mentioning any brand names, of course. So look, thank you. See you next time.
Thank you.
Bye.